Good afternoon, and welcome to Expose Yourself to Art, a show that explores the creative process by inviting artists to join us in a chat about their life and their art. My name is David Schrader, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Linda Scheller. Hi, Linda.
Hi, David.
Hi. Say, before we get to our guest and before we talk about what's going on in our community, I just wanted to share that last night, my wife Sharon and I had an experience that hadn't occurred in over a year. We went to a live performance.
Oh,
We got tickets to go to see Central West Ballet's performance of a show they called Creations. And it just felt great being out again and seeing a live performance. Well, it wasn't just like normal, but it was close. We still had to wear masks and sit spaced apart, but it was nice to be out, and we're looking forward to having more of this in the future as we open up. I guess it was June 15th, California is going to remove restrictions, so maybe we can get back to seeing live performances. So,
hey.
what else is going on in our
All
community?
Right. So, first of all, at Carnegie Arts Center and Lightbox Theater, we will have the Enchanted Lake. This is actually a Facebook watch party for Family Friday. It's going to occur May 28th at 7 p.m. So check it out.
All right. Yeah. Right. And the Gallo Center for the Arts presents the Brown Bag Concert Series every other Friday at noon throughout the summer, outdoors at the new Rotary Music Garden. If you haven't been there, it's a nice addition to our community. Check it out. Take your brown bag lunch.
Prospect Theater Project presents an online reading of The Birds. It will be streaming June 4th through 6th, and you can go to prospecttheaterproject.org. I highly recommend it. Can't be beat.
All right. And finally, we have the CSUS Chorus. We'll have its final concert online later this afternoon at 4:30. It's free on YouTube. So, as a way of introducing our guests, we have multiple guests today. They are members of a chamber music group called Synergy. And an interesting thing about Synergy is that they were the last group, the last performance we had at Gallo, at Gallo, what am I talking about? Gallery, at Michelin Gallery in our cabaret series. And the pandemic came right after, the day after that they performed. So those of you who missed it, we're going to open the show with an excerpt from their concert in our cabaret at Michelin Gallery. So Linda Knoll, let it rip. Wow.
That was thrilling.
Eric is on his way.
Okay. So this is one member of Synergy. I don't know if you remember that concert, Josh. You're obvious there.
Yes.
Yes.
I do remember that concert. That was the last concert. It's the last live concert I played.
Yeah. Well, that's how I introduced it. I said, you guys were the last live performance of anything that we had at the gallery at that time. Everything's been shut down.
Yeah.
So
I know.
So while we're waiting for
something here in the next few weeks or the next couple of months, but we'll see where the lockdown, everything goes.
Yeah. So while we're waiting for the other members to join us, you mentioned that's the last thing you had done at that time. What's it been like for you? It's been a rough go, or?
Well, I mean, it's been. Let me close that. There we go. It's been kind of a crazy year. I mean, it's been too much for a lot of us. I mean, we've had a lot of jobs just go away. A lot of work that just I mean, I had a full book last year, and pretty much all that work was gone. So it's been rough. It's been a rough year for musicians and artists in general, and us in specific. But we're working hard to come back, and we've got some ideas for the next few months. It just depends on kind of where things go as far as public. I mean, it looks like the public gatherings are going to be a thing again. So we'll just see how that takes off, where that goes.
Okay. Well, not to dwell on the negative too much. Let's move on. Why don't you tell us something about yourself and how you got into music and how you met up with these other folks?
Well, I got into music when I was pretty young. My mother is a violinist. And so I kind of was introduced to that through her. And I started, I think it was about 8 years old. Studied with the concert master there in town. I was born in Bakersfield. So studied with her for a number of years, Rebecca Brooks. And then I moved on to New England Conservatory, and then spent some time also at Cal State Northridge, and kind of built my career there in LA for about 20 years. Then I went on the road, went on a tour, and ended up here in San Francisco after a few years of other adventures. So, and here's Eric.
Yeah.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Hey, great.
See you.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Sorry, we had a little bit of a technology breakdown.
Little technical hurdles.
Yeah.
But now we're good.
So let's introduce everybody to our audience. So we have Josh has been talking a little bit about himself. And now we have Eric and Chuck joining us. And why don't we continue that? Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into music, how Synergy developed. So I'll throw it up to the two of you. I don't know who's going to talk first.
It's kind of fascinating to me how Synergy developed. It was Josh and I went to the same college, Cal State Northridge, but never met each other there.
Right. Yeah.
But then we did meet each other when we were on tour together. And the other players, like Keith, who is unfortunately not here with us today, we met at places like Henry Mancini Institute, and there's a wide variety of musicians that play with our ensemble that come from vast background. It's the best way I can put it.
Yeah. Yeah, and our other violinist who was playing there, Alex Navarro. We actually studied with the same teacher when we were kids too. So it's it's a wide net of a wide variety of people. But I think the main thing for everybody in this group is we were all kind of friends beforehand. So that helps.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And here's Chuck, and you know, we've been playing music for a long time together. He brought music into my life, so I'm thankful for that. And you know, we have that, so you know, it's kind of a unique group of people.
So Chuck,
Chuck, how did you get into music?
How did I get into music? Well, I started off with piano first when I was in the second grade, I think it was. And then in the fourth grade, I took violin lessons. And then in the fifth grade, I was continued with violin and started playing trumpet. And then I played a little trombone in the sixth grade. In the seventh grade, and say I just played violin and continued with my piano. And then when the eighth grade, I decided I was going to take, what did I end up doing there? Something, a wind student. I forgot the wind instrument. I was going to play saxophone, but I couldn't figure out how to do it.
Did you play the
So, no. So I played viola. I taught myself how to play the alto clef. And then I was very fortunate when I was in senior high school. Our high school didn't have the strongest orchestra, but we had a youth orchestra. I remember that when in the eighth grade, I got a chance to play in the California Youth Orchestra. And then I played in this El Camino Youth Orchestra. And in there is my first, well, I had some excellent opportunity to play some chamber music. I was in a quartet with the El Camino Youth Orchestra, and I was extremely excited because we were able to have a training session with the principal cellist of the San Francisco Symphony. And it was just a really great opportunity, and I really enjoyed it very, very much. And so then I went on and eventually I ended up at San Francisco State and graduated from San Francisco State as with a music education degree, and then came to Modesto. So there's a recap, brief recap.
Thanks for not rambling on.
Well, he's far more talented than either of us, actually.
So you, you were then a music teacher through your career? Is that?
Yep, that's true. And in fact, I remember one of the reasons why I wanted to go to San Francisco State was I wanted to be able to take lessons from people from the San Francisco Symphony. And I was very fortunate. I was able to take private lessons from the principal violist, although that didn't work out so well for me. So I was trying to find somebody who was a little bit more basic for me. So I ended up taking lessons from David Schneider, who was the principal second violinist of the San Francisco Symphony.
Now, he has a book that's out there, his autobiography, which is actually well done.
The San Francisco Symphony.
The history of the San Francisco Symphony.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's a really great book.
Yep.
So one thing I noticed about a couple of your, you, Eric, and Josh, in your bios, you both played with Beauty and the Beast. Did you do that together? Were you on tour at the same time?
Yeah, that was where we kind of reacquainted with each other. Like he had said, we'd worked in LA for a few years and sort of bounced around between some of the same groups and gigs, but never really got to know each other. So then we met. We were on the road together with Beauty and the Beast, and I think somewhere around show 1,000 or something was when we were like starting to come up with the ideas for what we would have eventually become Synergy. Just wanting to get off the road and do the things that we love to do rather than had to do. So yeah.
Could one or both of you talk about the importance of chamber music?
I'd love to chime in on that. Sure. For me, it's very personal. It's about developing not only a collaborative behavior, but also friendships and a unique sound. That's where you make progress. with the numerous people that are involved with Synergy Chamber Players, we're like family.
Mm. Yeah.
And some of our rehearsals will go, 6 hours, 7 hours, whatever it takes, just to get it done.
Well, yeah, and as far as my view, I mean, I started chamber music when I was my first experience with chamber music was actually in a quartet with my mother when I was like 11 or 12, and some other members of the orchestra there in town. And then I went away to a summer program which no longer exists called Congress of Strings. It was it's been gone for like 30 years. It was quite reputable at the time, and they were pretty much almost entirely chamber music. So I think once I was about 16 when I went there, and once I experienced that, that's what started driving my interest in music. Was chamber music, was the experience of, I think, anybody that's been in any kind of musical group will have some idea of what I'm talking about. I mean, rock band or whatever else, there's a kind of a communication that goes on there. And when you're working with people that are very, very good at what they do, it can become, I don't know, it's not quite like any other experience that I've ever had. The relationship between people in a quartet. There's a very sublingual kind of communication.
Well, let me ask you, Josh. I mean, how many times have you and I gotten into an argument?
Plenty of times. Whatever. That's just part of that's part of the process. It's, the music that we're working on is very. I mean, well, music itself is just an amazing thing. It doesn't matter where it comes from, but the music that we work with is some of the more difficult in the repertoire, and it's also just examples of some of the stuff that we all love from the past few hundred years, and in many cases some of the greatest music that's ever been written was written for string quartet.
Agreed.
It's an inspiring thing to work with, and it's an aspirational thing as well. So it brings a lot of value to my life, and I think to the lives of the people that work it. And then, of course, we hope that it brings something for the audience as well.
So we opened the show today with a piece that you played at our cabaret. It was a tango piece. Now that wasn't classical in any sense. Was that a more modern?
Well, no, I mean it is classical. I know
it's classical. I'm sorry.
It's hard
historical.
Yeah, right. It's hard to define these things because I mean, classification of music is sometimes maybe hard to really justify. But I mean, Libertango was composed by
Astor Piazzolla.
Astor Piazzolla, who was a very respected composer, studied at Juilliard, and took a tradition from his home country and really ran with it and created this whole. I mean, really, he's not the father of tango, but I mean, he really brought it to the national stage and exposed it to and it's a classical tradition. I mean, the instruments that they use in tango, violin, all of these things. I mean, this is all intertwined.
So yeah. The history behind that decision was we were working on music of the Americas, and that's a very challenging subject because there's so much music in the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Piazzolla was the right choice. I think we all felt that way. So we got this arrangement of Libertango from the violinist of Quartet San Francisco, Jeremy Cohen. And, we went with that, and we were able to actually play with Keith, who used to be a part of Quartet San Francisco. And, we just tried to make something happen there. It was a unique adventure for sure.
Fun experience. It was a great. We did a couple of those. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I recall when I heard it, I thought, oh, this isn't like chamber music I've heard in my past, which usually had a different background. I mean, you know, when you talked about music of the Americas, this was South America, obviously.
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't usually think of it in that, or I don't. I was pleasantly surprised. It was a nice variation.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of great South American composers. We haven't even scratched the surface.
I'm sure there are. It's not my area of expertise. So,
It's none of our expertise.
So,
but yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, David, please.
Oh no, I was when we talked to you the other day, you had mentioned that all of you have an interest not only in chamber music but in education, and the role that music plays in education. I don't know. Would you like to take off on that?
That's going to be a Chuck thing, I think.
Is it?
Well, yeah, that's one of the things that we talked about with the Synergy Chamber players, was trying to interact with our community. And in our discussions, one of the things that surfaced was the fact that, unfortunately, it seems to us anyway, that the students in schools, you know, going from elementary to high school, are getting less and less exposure to chamber music. And that's one of the things we wanted to try to see if we could regenerate some interest in, and get more kids involved in trying to do that, because I think there's a lot of there's a lot of value in to be able to have chamber groups, because you have one in the part, everybody's responsible for whatever their part is, and then trying to coordinate, match styles, and communicate with one another. And those are all benefits from the experience of chamber music. And by the way, it's not just instrumental chamber music, it's vocal chamber music as well. And there's an intimacy that develops in chamber choir settings when you only have one or two in a part, that is a different experience than singing in a large ensemble. You can kind of hide in the back of a large ensemble, but you can't do that in a chamber music setting. You're pretty much exposed, and you have to kind of meet the challenge. Let's put it that way.
Sort of
Is there a
mixture of being a soloist and an ensemble player.
Is there a history attached to chamber music? Does it have a history as far as development, or?
Oh, well, let me answer that. The way that chamber music was introduced to me was that some of the greatest composers like Mozart and Beethoven, etc., this was like kind of their hobby when they weren't writing music for bigger ensembles, but it was very intricate and very involved with, like, you know, all these kind of like minute details that really bring you to a mode where when you go into rehearsal and it's like, okay, so now what am I supposed to do with this? And it's challenging. I think it's a higher form of art than sometimes, and I wouldn't compare the two, symphonic and chamber, but I feel like it's just somewhat more challenging, and I enjoy that challenge. I think we all do.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah, well, they're their own experience. I mean, chamber music comes from, you know, back in the days when in Europe and the aristocracy was running things, and, you know, it was actually, you know, got its start in the palaces. So, you know, it was meant to be played in smaller spaces. So that's generally the you know, chamber music is just basically, it's a smaller group. That's all it really means. It can be a quartet, or it can be a quintet, or it can be up to 10, 12 people sometimes. So. Which we have done some performances of those, although not for you, but we've done some down south with a small chamber orchestra as well. So.
Okay, yeah.
We just try to do things that you don't have to rely on a conductor for. We have done some things in the past, but we have relied on conductors and conductors that we really love and respect. But it's more about communication and sharing good music with people that haven't heard that before.
Well, it's also about kind of a culture. I mean, in some ways, like a lot of the things that we do with that are kind of different with Synergy are more inward focused than outward facing. And for us, it's about the culture, and it's about I mean, Eric and I, we've done a lot of work professionally, in many different venues and many different markets. And sometimes you get yourself in a place where you're working professionally and you're doing a lot of these gigs, and everybody's doing their best, but it's not really a personal experience. It's not really something where you sit down and think, okay, let's really get down into the music and let's talk about how we really want to tell this story, whatever is going on with the music that we're preparing. And so Synergy also is kind of like, we want to take the time to explore those things, and we want to create a kind of culture that is supportive of it. So we're rehearsals for us are very much more like a family affair. We try to
We eat.
we try to be casual, and just because we work with people that we respect, and it's like there's no reason for people to try to lord over anybody else. So it's a very collaborative experience in our rehearsals. And it's built on the idea of respect, I guess, in a way, for each other and for each other's abilities and each other's ideas and opinions. And that's a difficult thing to achieve in any group, but especially with chamber music, where you have sometimes four very strong personalities, people with lots of ideas and many years of experience and study and just ideas that they've developed about a specific piece or composer or whatever. So that kind of relationship between artists it has to be fundamentally built on respect, and it also has to be, I think, in my opinion, something that's uplifting and what's the word I'm looking for? Affirming.
So when we were preparing for this, you sent us 3 samples of your music. We played one of them. We have 2 others. Maybe we could play another excerpt. And
Sure.
One of them is rather long, but it has an interesting history. It's what was that, Dvorak?
Yes,
piece?
Dvorak. Yes,
Yeah.
there's a short little clip we did for another promotional thing that we gave you guys. It's not the whole thing; it's just a short clip from the second movement. But that's actually that's a fascinating piece.
What did you send them, Josh?
Yeah,
love to hear it.
So backstage, Linda, if you could cue that up, cue up the. What is the title of it again? It's
a short excerpt from the second movement of the American String Quartet. That's what is it? Dvorak's String Quartet number 12, is it? It's 12, okay. Right, Eric?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So can we get that in here, Linda? Somehow. There we go. Hey, it's a good place to stop it. So,
Oh, that was gorgeous. Oh my
wasn't that
gosh, that cello part. Oh, beautiful.
I wish it was somebody else playing it.
why do you say
Overly
that?
humble. Yeah, well, I mean, that's, you know, a very well-known piece. I mean, if you're into chamber music, you've probably heard that piece before. It's got a fascinating history. It was written here in the United States by a Czech composer, Dvorak, who was here teaching at the.
It was in Iowa, correct? Is that
He
right?
was in Iowa at the time that it was written, yeah, but he was in the United States for the purpose of, I believe he was instructing at some conservatory in New York, I believe. And they had brought him over here to help find the American sound, because there was some question as to, because you know, he himself was very famous for having found sort of like a nationalist sound, like a sound for his own country. I mean, obviously, he was a very famous nationalist composer, and so successful that at the time somebody had the bright idea of bringing him over here and having him help us, you know, identify it. And you know, he got over here, and the first thing he did was start hanging out with all the African Americans, and you know, in his opinion, I think I'm paraphrasing. I believe the quote was something to the order of that everything that is necessary for a you know, a musical tradition already exists here. There's nothing that needs to be done other than, you know, take this and run with it, you know, which is what he tried to do in his music. You know, I think that even I think one of his melodies from the New World Symphony has actually been turned into a spiritual as well.
In many ways, yeah.
Yeah, and well, I think somebody took it and set it to some words, but you know, it's a fascinating piece, and one that you know, he himself had a lot to say about music in America that was quite prescient, and it's a great piece of music. So lots of history.
Great piece of music and an interesting story. I was fascinated when Eric first told me about it, that you were going to play it. And he said, we're going to do music of the Americas, and said, we have this piece by Dvorak. It's like, wait a minute. And he's from Iowa. It's like, no, he wasn't.
No, it was written in Iowa.
I know, written in Iowa, but I wasn't hearing it. But, oh my
We got
gosh.
out of control with that program, I think.
A lot of focus on Iowa.
Yeah, I think my response was, my alma mater for one of my degrees, Iowa. I didn't know Dvorak was there when I was there. So.
What did you go to, UI or?
Yeah, University of Iowa.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, that program for us was very, very special. And we have to thank the Mislin Gallery for your welcomeness and, you know, everything that you did for us and making us feel at home.
I enjoyed it as well. I enjoyed your duet with this other fellow that's in the room with you.
Oh, you mean this guy?
Yeah. He is related, right?
So
You two are related.
I sometimes think I'm adopted, but I'm reminded that that's probably not the truth.
I enjoyed that.
So, Linda, any questions from you?
Nothing that hasn't been asked yet. I'm just all ears. I mostly want to hear what you fellas want to say.
I can
Well,
share with you something that I didn't. My background as a pianist, I experienced a lot of what young pianists experience growing up, and that is that you're sort of in your own little world as a pianist. It's solo pianos. They don't experience ensemble piano very much at all. And there's a kind of an irony here, because if you go back in time, prior to the 1900s, it was more common for people to do four-hand piano. In other words, two people sitting at the piano keyboard. And there were arrangements of even the symphony orchestra, symphonies that were composed, and you could actually play those with two people playing it at the piano, the four-hand piano arrangements. And then when the record player came into existence, then, well, that became less and less and less. And now you probably haven't heard any four-hand piano performances, which is one of the things that I can kind of encounter, I'm encouraging piano teachers to please consider doing four-hand piano arrangements. Mozart had a lot of, Beethoven too, the same way, four-hand piano. The idea, again, is it involves two people. And this is the idea of this synergy. Two people coming together, or more, but usually just one or two people or a small group of people coming together and interpreting a piece of music collectively to be able to perform it. So it's an experience that I hope that piano students can enjoy. The other part of that is, when we started our program out, and when Synergy started, it was a piano trio performance.
Yeah,
which was the piano, violin, and cello. And that was very common at that time too. There's piano quartets, which is the piano, violin, viola, cello. But piano trios were very common, and that's one of the things that in our discussion we felt that the community doesn't experience a lot of piano trio music, and there's a lot of kids that take piano that they don't experience hearing piano trios or piano ensembles with other string players, and that's an experience that is really, really unique. And it's, you can learn a lot, and a pianist especially, because if you're been in this solo environment where it's just been you, now you have to sit and listen to the other instrumentalists and make sure that your part is fitting with the other instrumentalists. And not only that, you're blending with the other instrumentalists. You're not overpowering them, which the pianist oftentimes
Piano can very easily overpower,
sometimes this is something that comes up pretty regularly, I suppose, in rehearsals. Is somebody overpowering you when you shouldn't? Like it's just that juxtaposition of how voices come together, and the patience and the hard work that it takes to get to that right timbre that gets you to you want to have your final product. And we're going to keep working, obviously. I mean, there's nothing is ever perfect, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answers either. So
brings up it's an interesting topic. I don't know if you remember, Linda, when we talked to Greg Savage a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking, he has a love of jazz, of classic jazz. Not the new soft jazz, and he was talking about how a lot of people don't understand it, because the core of it are musicians talking to each other, communicating with each other, and sending it back and forth, and what do you have to say and what do you have to say. And within our greater field of the arts, that's an interesting topic too, because how much do you as an artist take in from other people? Do you want to work with other people? Do you work better alone? And what are the effects of working with other people? And that's what we're hearing from you, is that the thing that attracts you is
musicians. I can't do anything. I mean, that's
Say that again. I was.
Without other musicians, I can't do anything that makes any sense to you.
I don't know.
You know, you don't like the idea of solo performance, huh? Unaccompanied.
I mean, I do that from time to time. I'm sure all of us have, but that's where you feel the most at home.
Well, yeah,
Or at least I feel the most at home.
But the three of you all, I mean, you basically have instruments that are also solo instruments,
yes.
or can be under different circumstances.
Well, you know, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing about chamber music is that it's both kind of ensemble but also solistic playing, because you know there's usually only one person on a part, and depending on what your, you know, if your part is, you know, the melody for that, you know, for that section, then you know you obviously have to, you know, kind of come above the rest of be above the rest of the voices. But yeah, I mean, it's been, well, I mean, Eric, I'm sure you have something to say about that as well. But you know, it's been a good experience for us, and we're, you know, we've had, I think everybody's been kind of dealing with this last year, but you know, I think things are going to bounce back, and we'll be doing some more performances coming up, you know, soon.
I wanted to share something, David, that you brought up. I thought was an important thing to share. Jazz musicians have the opportunity to improvise, and that's very important what they do. In other words, there's an idea, a musical idea expressed, and you improvise on that idea. And that's something that kind of got lost in when we had the classic music. The only improvisation that was going on was the cadenzas and concertos. That was left up to the soloist to do. But then they started printing up the cadenzas that people had done, and that became the standard. So the violinist or whoever the soloist was, the instrument they were doing, then they played what was written down as a cadenza. And we don't hear a lot of improvised music. Sometimes you will. Somebody will say, "I'm going to do my own cadenza. I'm not going to do what's written or what you've heard before," which I think is important. You want to say something?
Well, yeah, let me chime in on this a little bit. You know, the importance of having a group like Synergy is having people that have different views on music. For example, our colleague Keith was a very fluid improviser. And just not only that, but just an extremely talented violist.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can see him playing, you know, in all kinds of different genres. That's how Keith and I met, actually, was at the Henry Mancini Institute, and we were learning about things like learning how to play salsa or a mambo, or how to improvise and do things like that. I think Keith took it a little bit further than I was able to. But at any rate, you know, his group in San Francisco is tremendous, and we're lucky to have him. We're lucky to have everybody that's part of this group, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, and we're lucky to listen to you too.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a third piece here that it's a short piece. Maybe we can play that, put that up, and
Well, yeah, it's just it's an excerpt from the first movement of Grieg's first string quartet.
Oh, you guys are gonna love this one. This is great.
It was a great experience. I'd never played that. Yeah.
gorgeous.
You like
So
that?
here's a prime example of something that doesn't get performed very often. And we were happy to share it with several different communities.
Is
Is
there a
it
reason
because
for
of the
that it hasn't?
difficulty that it's not performed often?
Yeah, sometimes, we're just overwhelmed with all this repertoire. You're faced with things like, what are you going to do with modern music versus, classic music? But that was Edvard Grieg. And for me, personally, I think that's one of the greatest pieces of quartet literature that's ever been written.
It was gorgeous.
Yeah, it certainly was. I noticed that two of the little excerpts you sent us were where you were performing in churches. Is that a usual venue for you? I know there's a strange question, but I just...
I can easily answer that for you there, David. We have somewhat of a relationship with the Episcopalian churches through the Diocese of California. We work those things out, and we're happy to be there. And I think sometimes they're actually happy to have us there.
Yeah, so it's a nice setting, good acoustics.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's part of the thing is we try to do some of the concerts that we do are not in cities that have really good spaces for chamber music. They might have an orchestra, or, something for an orchestra. So generally we find that these older churches have the best sound. I mean, they really do sound great, and they're generally great venues for concerts. And so yeah, we've done a few different concerts at a few different churches, and it's always been a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
So in movies, chamber music in movies are always played for the royalty in a palace or a mansion. Have you done any mansion work? Or any? I think so.
Have we? I don't think with this group. We've played. Individually, we've done plenty of groups like that, but I don't know if Synergy. I don't think we've ever done a mansion concert. No, not yet.
Okay, well, I shouldn't be so silly. But do you play for private groups as well as that would be
Oh, sure. Yeah,
akin to that? I mean,
Yeah, of course. Yes.
I was going to say no, but that's the prime example of how a group like this operates, where we have to really work these things out.
Uh-huh.
It's difficult. And Josh and I both know it, and so does my dad here, Chuck. He understands. Like, sometimes we agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it works.
Eric, I want to know why you chose the cello, or why the cello chose you.
Oh, Linda, that's a good question. Well, let's see. I was very young. I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years old. And I started playing the violin. My older sister, who is, 3 years older than me, was playing the violin as well. And that got kind of competitive. So I got my twinkle pin in violin.
Your twinkle pin? Yeah.
That's you might want to explain that. Not maybe not everybody knows what that means.
And then I graduated onto the cello, and it's been with me ever since then. And I wouldn't regret that, ever.
Go ahead, Linda.
I heard that it has the greatest similarity to the range of the human voice. Is that correct?
Okay, so yeah, that's something that's really, really common. People talk about that all the time. Yeah, I believe so. With the violin and the viola, you get these with violin in particular, which I love, by the way, Josh. I'm not trying to smash on you here.
More complaints.
Yeah, it gets high and a little bit screechy, and then with the viola it's a little bit barky, but with the cello it just seems like it's home.
Well, I think we need Josh's rebuttal at this point. You need to defend the violin now.
Well, everybody has their own. People like what they like.
Yeah.
Why
do you like the violin?
Well, initially I think initially I wanted to play trumpet or something, but it wasn't.
That would not work well for you, Josh.
But I was also quite interested in the violin, partially because my mother was a violinist, so I took it up, and I think I was a very difficult student to start with. I started off as with many kids, you're very enthusiastic to start, and then it kind of start to struggle a little bit. But for me, it really was chamber music that kind of turned that around. When I started playing chamber music, I was like, oh, this is why I want to play. But I love the violin. I love all instruments, but the violin specifically, I think. It is a very melodic instrument. It's a very sensitive instrument. It's a very responsive instrument. And it's very easy to, it's very easy to overpower. So it's a challenge, especially for somebody, that's my size. But it's something that that's been very personally rewarding to me. So, yeah.
Well, I think at this point it's kind of fun to admit that. So Chuck here, myself, and Josh are the original founding members of Synergy Chamber Players.
Okay.
So, we have a handful of other people that love to play with us, and we love to play with them as well. But this is the way it started.
So when you started answering Linda's question about the cello, what popped in my head, being a psychologist shrink for many years, I thought, oh, that's the one instrument your dad didn't play.
No, he plays it actually better than I do.
Oh, okay. I was keying on when he was talking about all the instruments he did play, the trumpet and the piano and the violin. I don't recall him saying the cello, and I thought, oh, that's why he did that.
There's a story behind that.
Okay.
Do tell.
My dad, when I was in elementary school, liked to kind of, I think he wanted to make a violin himself. Anyway, he ended up, he was going to repair a cello and put it together. And he had this violin maker that was helping him. And he actually built a scroll to the cello. And I was anxious to see this all come together, the scroll and the body of the cello and so forth. And I said, well, I can't wait to do this, hear this, because I kind of like to try that. Well, it never happened. He never got it put together. Oh. And so it was one of those instruments that I kind of like, well, I would like to try to do that sometime. And when Eric was born, I was very anxious about, I said, well, let's try cello. And so that's when I kind of turned interest in cello through the Suzuki program. And so I enjoyed that very much. And Ira Lane was, he was one of Eric's cello students and
teachers.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me, I meant teacher. Eric was his student. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that I really enjoyed. And I've enjoyed the idea that, the cello has a kind of has a rich, mellow sound. And also has, if you get up in the upper ranges, it gets, very expressive treble clef sound. So, and this unique, so you can't make that kind of a sound on a violin, and definitely with a viola the same way. So,
anyways, I need to chime in with this one. We have a little bit of time left here, so I'm just going to say, okay, so I started studying with Dr. Ira Lane. Mm-hmm. Great teacher, great man. and after dealing with a couple of other teachers in between, I ended up at DePaul University with Stephen Balderston. Turns out that Mr. Balderston was a former student of Dr. Lane's.
Oh my. Wow.
And that was just kind of a fun little piece of stuff to share.
Yeah, well, we are coming to the end, and
Oh, darn.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you
And
for having us.
I look forward to hearing you again. And when we start our cabarets up, I'm going to try to find a place for you to come back.
We would
Because,
love to.
when you were there, this was the last night before we got shut down, and
Yeah,
a lot of
literally the
people.
last day you could perform.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't show up because of. I mean, they bought tickets, but they didn't show up. They were
Understandably.
afraid of, getting together in a crowd. So I really want to find a way to bring you back. And
We would love to, David.
I'd love to.
if we can find a mansion in which to have a party, I mean,
Oh.
that would be
Does the
If anyone
McHenry
happens to have one lying around, right? Just
yeah. So,
David, thank you for having us today.
sure, enjoyed
David
it.
and Linda, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank-
you.
Thanks for the little
Enjoyed it
excerpts.
so much.
Those were great. So, okay, well,
great
We'll
speaking
see
with
you
all of you.
around.
Thanks.
okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's see.